Has that ever happened to you before? You come to the butcher shop and all you want is a couple of pieces of meat to put on the barbie. And you look into that, the cabinet of meat, and you're completely bamboozled to the point that you turn into an idiot. Here's a tip. Don't look in the cabinet. Look behind the cabinet and ask the dude behind there what piece of meat to stick on the barbie. Let's go and do that. So here we are at Peter Black & Sons. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing great.
What are the best cuts for the barbecue?
As you know, red meat is back in again.
Yeah.
Everybody's eating red meat again. Well, let me explain something to you. This is a Porterhouse steak. It has a bone in it. Some people might call that a T-bone steak.
That's true.
But because of the size of the tenderloin, that makes it qualifies as a Porterhouse steak. Now, this is an actual T-bone steak, and you can see the difference. See the size of the tenderloin and that?
Yeah.
And that? So this hasn't got as much tenderloin in it, so that makes it a T-bone steak. So the flavor of this is going to be excellent because of the fact that it's got a bone in it. It's not quite the one that you want to put on a plate if you're having a fancy dinner party. It doesn't show well.
I think it looks great, personally.
Now, if you've got a bunch of guys over for poker, this is going to be fine. They don't care what it looks like.
That's
But your girlfriend's coming over, or the boss is coming over.
Want some little pretty
nice little piece of filet mignon.
Oh, look at the little
piece of filet mignon for the lady, and maybe for the guy, a little piece of New York steak. Now you're probably wondering, where do they come from?
Where do they come from, Peter?
I thought you'd never ask. Let me show you where they come from.
Thank you very much.
If you take the original Porterhouse steak, per se,
I see
and
where
you
you're going
take the
with
tenderloin,
this.
right there.
Yep.
And where do you think the New York steak comes from?
The square peg.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
right
there
there.
she was.
So there you have.
Right.
That would be a Porterhouse steak without any bone in it. So there's your fillet, and there's your New York steak.
Yep.
The only difference is the bone is out.
Yep.
And you unfortunately lose a little bit of flavor.
So what are these other ones? What's this big chunk of lard?
Okay, now this is a traditional, this is probably one of the biggest selling roasts in the store. They call it prime rib roast. When you go to major restaurants, they usually have prime rib on the menu. And that traditionally has a bone along the back. You can see there's 3 little rib bones on the back, hence the name prime rib, because it's off the ribs. This is done as a roast, and we're talking steaks right now.
Yep.
So what we do is we take out the center of that, the very, very center of it, and we end up with what they call the rib eye. Which is the eye. Let me hold that there.
Yep.
It's the very, very center of the prime rib. The bone's been removed, and all of a sudden you have a little piece of steak. You still want to cut it nice and thick.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, that
Just
looks
about
awesome.
the right size.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
There's 2 beautiful little ribeye steaks.
Now, what's this thing?
That is a flank steak. Now, this is a very unusual steak, and what they would do...
It doesn't look like a high-quality piece of meat to me.
It's not.
It's not,
because in the old days, it was meant to be rolled with a stuffing in it, and then it'd be rolled.
Yep.
And that they would call that mock duck. So somebody came up with the idea, if we marinate that overnight in some of those secret sauces that guys always know about, could be as simple as beer, could be wine, something with a bit of a bite.
You betcha.
Leave it overnight, becomes very, very tender, and then you would barbecue that on your barbecue for about 4 or 5 minutes on either side.
Just like that, like as a whole side.
And then when you go to carve it, if you have to think that this is now cooked, you slice it very, very thin on the angle, and so you have little tiny strips. The flavor in that is absolutely incredible.
Okay, now what's this big thing?
Now this is what a butcher would call a, let me move this one here. This is a beef tenderloin.
Are you sure?
Beef tenderloin.
Okay.
But a chef would call that a filet mignon.
Filet mignon? I know what a filet mignon is.
Same thing.
Yep.
Same thing exactly. And we've just done it with this little piece that was out of the...
Oh, so that's what we cut up before.
Same thing.
That's what we cut up before.
Yep, these are the ribeyes. Now, this is the filet mignon. So of all the cuts of meat that we have, this is traditionally, or whether you like it or not, is the most expensive piece of beef of the whole animal.
There you go. And now what's the biggest piece we have right here?
Now that's
this looks like...
That's a New York strip.
Right.
Let me move this one over here. That's a New York strip.
Yep.
And that was what we had here off the T-bone,
Oh, I get it.
right?
Yep.
But it's in a piece. And you could do that in a piece. You could barbecue that as one whole piece, and then you just slice it thin when it's cooked. Not many people do that because that's a big piece of meat.
That's a lot of meat.
It's be a lot of meat. But then you're going to get 25,
Where is the justice?
25 steaks off there. So when you divide it,
Absolutely.
That's,
All looks like good meat.
It is,
So
yeah.
that's about beef.
that's about.
So what do you reckon we move on to pork?
Pork's a good thing to go on to.
Pork is a good thing to go into. Hey, look, Scott, it's bigger than my head.
Okay, now I got a trick question.
Tell me.
What does that look like?
That looks like a T-bone steak to me.
Pretty close, isn't it?
Huh?
But you know what the difference is? That's beef.
And
That's a piggly wiggly. That's a pork chop with the bone in it.
Right.
Delicious on the barbecue.
Yep.
Again, cut at least an inch thick. So you could do a pork chop with the bone in. What I'm going to do here,
Oh, hello.
I'm going to give you a chance to do
Well, hey.
a pork chop.
Now that's a big piece of pig.
This is the same thing as the New York strip.
Oh, I hear you.
This
Yep.
is the same cut,
Yep, right.
except in pork.
Different animals.
Right? So we're going to cut this here.
Yep.
We're going to take off a nice boneless pork chop. Now here's another
yeah.
trick question. What does that look like?
Hey.
Eh?
Hey.
You see?
Oh, see what?
You're learning. See?
Oh, stop
Like
it.
a New York steak of pork, which is no
This guy's
such
a
cut.
master butcher,
There's no
all
such
right.
cut as that. But that would be a boneless pork chop.
Yep.
And you can do that in the barbecue. It's just that
Yep,
part
oh,
there.
yeah.
Is that
Yep.
part there.
Cool bananas.
Okay.
No worries.
This little piece here is that little piece
Yep.
there.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. Yep.
So that's basically.
That's pork.
Now I'm going to explain one thing to you about that I haven't. You'll notice how really, really lean that is.
Indeed.
Right. Not necessarily the best cut to be moist on the barbecue because there's no fat to keep it moist.
Right.
It's very lean. It's going to get, if you cook that a minute too long, it's going to be very dry. But if you took the other end, which as you can see this end here, is fattier. It's not the end that sells well because people traditionally don't want fat. But that's the part that's going to have the flavor. So
Yeah.
I'll cut this through here and show you what I'm talking about. See the fat, the marbling in that piece, and the no marbling in that piece?
Yep.
Which do you think is going to be the juiciest? You've got it.
Yep. The ones with all the fat. So,
You've got it.
quick wrap up.
Yes.
We've got all these different types of pork, and the pork with the more fat marbled through it is going to be the tastiest, and it's going to be the more moist,
More moist.
while on the
Yeah,
on the grill.
exactly.
And all of these are great for grilling.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've both got meaty hands. Oh, I feel so manly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, mate.